Hi, my name is Kayla Hilner,
And this is Austin.
and we're talking about our case number 2, which is dealing with UPS. If you have ever purchased anything online, which I'm sure most of us have, you have dealt with UPS. UPS is one of 3 major parcel delivery companies within the United States. On an average day, UPS handles about 15.8 million packages. A lot of these packages travel by air, with UPS being the 9th largest airline in the US. However, a lot of fuel is also burned by its trucks. They plan to invest about $1 billion into making their ways of shipping packages more green. The plan is to install sensors into the trucks that deliver your packages. These sensors being implemented could save the company millions of dollars in the long run. UPS is installing about 200 sensors in its vehicles, in the brakes, engine box, and on the exterior to collect data and pinpoint opportunities when drivers can adjust their driving to maximize fuel efficiency. These changes are saving UPS around $400,000 each year. In addition to cutting costs by becoming a more sustainable and green company, UPS embraces this new expectation of corporate social responsibility. Consumers expect companies to make decisions that will be beneficial to them and to the environment in which they conduct business. We have seen over the past 5 years even how much has changed in the world of being environmentally conscious. And with this upcoming generation, they are only going to expect that companies act responsibly and conduct business in a more green way. Making an effort to impact the world around them will undoubtedly draw customers' attention and any future business they might have to give. I think the marketing ploy of being a green company really says so much, and personally, I always choose to give my business to a company who acts socially responsible. With makeup and skincare products, I always make sure there's a cruelty-free label on it. I am much more likely to dine at an establishment that uses compostable containers and other food items for sure. And with shipping, I use UPS. This company has been around long enough to have data and knowledge on consumer trends. They know exactly how to market this to make this green initiative seem fun, and they draw people in with this. As you can see from the few pictures here, UPS spent time and resources creating forms of advertising that clearly indicate their sustainable initiative.
Mm-hmm. So, in this marketing campaign and its investment to contribute $1 billion to try and go green, there's some cool things we're going to talk about just from the management information system standpoint, how this company is operating a little differently with its improvements. So, one of the questions in this case study focuses around how UPS is developing a more sustainable management information systems infrastructure. So first, we're going to pick that question apart just a little bit. So what might constitute as a more sustainable management information system infrastructure? So management information systems infrastructure, also known as MIS, we'll refer to it later on just as that, includes the plans for how a business build, deploy, use, and share its data, its processes, and its assets. A solid MIS infrastructure can reduce costs, improve productivity, optimize business operations, generate growth, and increase profitability. So when analyzing this particular case study, the focus of this situation is all about working to embrace a more sustainable physical and then also financial operations. And UPS sought to do this in the application by finding ways to collect and analyze data that they use for a majority of their business, and both of those being mainly their cargo trucks and their massive cargo planes, their jet planes, to determine more efficient alternatives for operating in the distribution process. So a significant example of this is detailed in this actual case study itself, and it focuses on tracking driving patterns of some of their trucks in order to reduce the idling time, which in turn saves the money company because of its expenses on fuel, and then also reduces the company's carbon footprint on the environment of just idling engines. So one of the ways, just to go into a little bit more detail about how that works, is the actual sensors that they have analyzing the patterns might analyze, for example, traffic patterns on a map and display. And so in order to reduce the idling time waiting at a stoplight, at a light that is red, it's possible that they have computers that enable alternate routes so that they don't waste any time at backed up stop sections or any of those areas. So additionally, the case also mentions how UPS plans to use its management information system programming to do similar feats in the area of aerial distribution for their jet planes, which will just add constitute a majority of the overall fuel consumption, since fuel, specifically jet fuel, is very, very expensive. So by tracking the delivery plane routes on the fly and adjusting flying speeds and patterns for more direct routes, UPS plans to reduce its costs in jet fuel and continue to pursue a more sustainable physical and financial operations.
So virtually everything will be available to UPS once they install these systems within their trucks. Having data so easily accessible will help streamline decision making for higher up employees within the company, and they will also be able to make more informed decisions. Readily available information is so important to a company's success, and creating a way in which they can directly analyze the way their shipping methods are making an impact on the world around them will only increase business for them. So, as we discuss this case, we are really discussing a specific characteristics of MIS infrastructures, and these are the agile MIS. We have accessibility, which is who has the ability to use the system. Availability is it readily available for everyone to have and be able to use. Maintainability is easy to keep the system functioning well. Portability is can you access it from another site, another computer, cross-functioning for operation, via various types of devices. Reliability, ensuring that the data is collected accurately and from the correct sources. Scalability is the ability for the system itself to function properly or scale up, meeting the demands of an ever-changing business world, and the ability to adapt is so important here. And usability, is the system easy to operate? Is it easy to learn how to use? Do we do we have a lot of downtime teaching employees or higher ups to use the system?
So in the case study, it is a short case study, and it gives us just a brief look into sort of the management information systems that they are using and accessing via this sustainability campaign. And so I'm not going to be able to go over an application to every single one of the agile MIS infrastructure characteristics that Kayla just mentioned, but there were several that really stood out to me, and so we're going to go over that real quick. The first one that I think really stood out in this case is UPS's focus on availability through its MIS system. So UPS is it's a company that prides itself on fast and reliable parcel shipping. So it's very important for their MIS to be operating accurately while also at a fast pace. So in today's day and age, tracking individual parcels is pretty much a norm. Where both on the corporate and even the consumer side, they value current data regarding the whereabouts of their shipment. I know personally from the receiving end of using UPS, I have the ability as a consumer to keep track of the location of my shipment until it arrives at my door, sometimes even with like hourly updates. So it's just ridiculously important, I think, because of the importance we have now put on the consumer culture and the consumer side of just this industry to have accurate hourly availability. And it's also just so important for UPS because, again, of the nature of their industry where they are shipping packages, sometimes all around the world to keep track of for information purposes, what made it where, at what time and when. And they need that all the time, 24/7, because, again, they're doing the dirty work of getting those parcels to all the different parts. That's the industry, that's their job. So they have to be able to record it for when they're successful and then also when they are not successful in that. So a second characteristic that I'm going to mention is accessibility, and it kind of pairs up with what I was just talking about. Just the new focus on the consumer end, but then also from UPS as a firm, the emphasis that we've put on the shipping industry to really value the ability to track a moving parcel. That's just so important. Part of this means that the consumer has to have access to the same information that the firm is probably tracking. And as a management information system, in the instance of UPS, you have to have open your accessibility also to include the customer now, just because of that emphasis from the consumer side that we have on having that. And then lastly, the last thing I'll note is just reliability. Again, because of the nature of the shipping industry and the company's emphasis on current locational tracking of its parcels, whether UPS sends a shipment thousands of miles away or just around the block, it's important for them to know for certain what actually transpired, when, and where. And if the trackers and the information systems that they have in place are not doing that, then they're going to be failing as a company. So yeah, those were just some of the ways that I saw this being quite applicable to UPS. And I encourage you guys listening to list in your response to our case study maybe one other way that you understand some of these qualities of an agile MIS system to apply to this case study and with UPS. So go ahead and list that in your response.
Another factor we're going to talk about is how UPS could benefit from cloud computing or grid computing. So cloud computing refers to the delivery of on-demand computing resources. Usually these are via the internet. Oftentimes this means instead of storing and collecting data in large physical storerooms, we have the ability to do so virtually via a secured space on the internet. Not only does this save a company on the cost and space of housing said data computers, but it also takes away the locational specificity of data access. Via a web address, or if you just have access to your laptop, you may be able to access all the things you need to observe and pull from, data-wise from your MIS. As we mentioned earlier, one of the industry expectations regarding the distribution process now includes consumer accessibility and reliability. Mm-hmm. Adapting our management information system, or UPS's management information system, to a cloud network. This might enable UPS more accessibility as a global company. They'll give them the ability to view data through a cloud system.
Mm-hmm. And so additionally, two major physical storehouses for their database would no longer be in use or needed to be taken care of. And, that just includes the electrical costs, also the heating costs and costs of operations, that they have two major information database facilities that they would no longer need to be looking to as an expense, and that they could use those expenses to contribute with the money that they save by pouring into its information systems to better understand patterns of financial consumption, or to even continue to focus on improving the efficiency or expenditure rates of its major shipping vehicles, like we mentioned with the jet airplanes and the cargo trucks. Or even one step further, what they could be doing to use the money that they're saving by not having those storehouses and switching to the cloud. They could even look into future sustainable shipping methods that maybe even have not yet been created. I'm just going to throw out examples like Amazon's drone program that they've begun working with, or even space travel, or it's kind of cool, but 3D printing, portable consumer creation technology. So a lot of different things just kind of on the edge. There's a lot of research going into those things. And if they're interested, that was something that they could also put money into, because they would be saving most likely money by switching to a cloud network.
They have the physical asset of these buildings that data was stored in already. So, they don't have to make any more purchases if they wanted to expand into these buildings. They can sell them for, money to put back into the business. It gives them tons of opportunity. However, with the use of this technology or any technology, people have to be aware of issues, security within the cloud that could likely arise. Breaches within systems are something that all businesses need to be aware of, but it's something very important that UPS should consider. Making sure the browsers are all secure and information is protected is obviously very important.
And one of the just potential hazards of keeping all of your information stored on an internet cloud site, you might have to worry about this additionally, in a physical sense, but is what happens when the internet shuts down, or when you lose that direct connection. What happens to the information? Is it compromised? Are you able to receive that information that is lost in the process of booting back up and to the secured network? And so some actually cloud software actually enables the information to be stored in the process of it being shut down. And so that is something to take into account, but it's choosing the correct sort of cloud application that would work with that to enable a more secure, resilient network and data storage system in the case that something like that were to happen.
So we've talked about exactly how UPS would implement this system, what the downsides of security might be, all the different components. Something we haven't discussed is potential ethical problems that could come with tracking your drivers and tracking your airline pilots. A specific ethical problem that UPS could encounter with the installation of these tracking devices is the issue of privacy. Drivers would be tracked by their routes, how long it takes them in specific regions, delivery rates for each individual package. Everything they do during the day would basically be monitored. They put over 200 monitors on each truck to see how efficiently they're running. While this may just appear as like a supervision of some kind, if you will, which is typical in a normal workplace, but not typical with the case of independent truck delivery drivers. It still gives the driver pretty much zero freedom to make decisions during their day of work. If the MIS structure is indicating they need to make specific patterns, they have pretty much the ability is taken away from them to make the best decision that they see in that moment. This doesn't seem entirely wrong ethically, in my opinion, but since they have had the freedom to make their best decisions for themselves, whatever the situation might be, or whatever they've encountered during a route, it might seem like UPS is taking something away from their employees by making decisions for them. I do not really think this is like a plausible issue that the company might face, because I believe that installing the systems will establish metrics that will in turn make the company a more efficient and profitable one, but it's just something to consider.
So this idea coming back again that keeps arising in most of these cases is just this whole concept of the privacy of the individuals when it comes to all of this data information being tracked. Are we losing it? Is there a process to be able to balance all of this information about the individual with human liberties? So that's something to keep in mind as you guys are looking into these responses. And again, we'd love your feedback. But essentially, that settles it for this particular case study on UPS and its $1 billion investment to going green. So that's the gist of our presentation, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.